Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. It is race week. Once again, we are here to predict the Qatar Grand Prix, the last sprint race of the year. Brandon, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Got a lot of points on the table this weekend at a track that has provided some good racing the last couple of years, so I'm excited. It's another great weekend in Formula 1.
Because you're down 27-23, so time for you to make a comeback. This is the perfect weekend for you to do it.
This is true. More points available for the drivers means more points available for us, for me specifically. So we'll see how my predictions pan out, but I'm predicting it to be a wild weekend. That's for sure.
More points for me. I could clinch the championship this weekend. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I could pull a Max Verstappen. If I leave with a 7-point lead or greater, I could clinch the championship, which would be insane work for me. A lot of stuff going on track. We just witnessed an incredible race in Las Vegas. It's going to be an awesome weekend in Qatar. So let's jump right into it with our podium pushers of the weekend. I've gone with Oscar Piastri. I think he's been letting McLaren down a little bit recently. Really, ever since we came back from the fall break, we saw him kind of let down in Austin, a little bit of a letdown in Mexico, a little bit of a letdown in Brazil, definitely a letdown in Vegas. So he's on this bit of a streak of letting down his team. Ferrari's catching up in the constructors. I think Oscar Piastri turns it around this weekend. He got his first sprint win last year at Qatar, also finished P2 in the main Grand Prix. So I think Oscar Piastri gonna get back on the right track at Qatar this weekend, and I'm predicting him to be my podium pusher.
I think it's a great pick. Oscar did have a fantastic weekend in Qatar last year. So we'll see what happens. But my podium pusher of the weekend, I've gone with somebody who I haven't predicted to be podium pusher of the weekend, I think, ever. So this is kind of wild. But this is someone who's been on a pretty hot streak recently. He's really been helping his team out, not letting them down, kind of doing the opposite of what Oscar's been doing. But I've gone with Nico Hülkenberg. I think he's going to have a fantastic weekend. Now is the time where Haas needs their drivers to deliver. Nico has been the one that has been delivering all season long. I expect that to continue. He's a fantastic qualifier, and when he qualifies well, at least so far this season, he's performed really well in the race. Haas has seemingly enough pace to kind of keep the position or close to it in which they qualify. So I'm expecting Nico to have a great weekend. There's a lot of points on the table, and I think he could potentially score in both races. That's not an official prediction. Not an official prediction, but it's a possibility. So that's who I've gone with.
I won't hold you to the double point score needed for your podium pusher to come true. Nico Hülkenberg has usually been qualifying so well this year that he out-qualifies the Haas and falls back a little bit during the race. He actually went forward last weekend, so good for him. He qualified 9th, finished 8th. A solid best of the rest performance from him last week, so I think that is a great choice. Back marker of the weekend, I've gone for Liam Lawson, and this is me looking back towards last year as well. It was his worst race of the year, filling in for Daniel Ricciardo last year. Kind of left a bad taste in people's mouths after he put it in the gravel in Qatar and just didn't have a good weekend. He's kind of faded a little bit. He came back into the sport strong, had an awesome drive in Austin. Now he's kind of been running into people, and Yuki Tsunoda has been outperforming him again. And this is crunch time for Liam Lawson as well. Not only to help RB try and finish 6th in the Constructors Championship, but it could be crunch time for his career as well. Whether he wants to get that Red Bull seat or secure that RB seat for next year, these next 2 weekends are pretty crucial for Liam Lawson, and unfortunately for him, I don't think he's going to have a great weekend in Qatar.
Yeah, he didn't have the best weekend out in Vegas. So, he's kind of been trending down a little bit. And like you said, this is crunch time. If he doesn't perform well these next 2 weekends, there's a possibility that Isaac Hadjar gets the RB seat or something like that. Because Red Bull has a lot of young drivers waiting in the wings that would be more than happy to get a full-time Formula One drive, even for part of a season, like Liam has had for the last 2 years. So it's getting down to crunch time for him. we'll see what happens. I've gone with Fernando Alonso for my back mark of the weekend. 2 years ago, he had a great race in Qatar, ended up on the podium, I believe, and really outdrove his Alpine in that race. But I'm expecting Fernando to not have a great race this weekend. He had a decent race in Vegas, kind of middle of the pack, not really doing anything, but that Aston Martin has kind of seemed a little squirrely recently. Doesn't seem like the drivers can get a good handle on it, and with how dusty and windy Qatar is, I'm thinking that Fernando might not have a great weekend. So we'll see what happens. Kind of like a half vibes prediction, half data backed prediction, but we'll see. I've gone with Fernando.
Hey, to give you some confidence, Fernando Alonso found himself off the track twice last year in Qatar and ruined one of my predictions in the process. I will never forgive him for that. The downfall of Aston Martin needs to be studied. They started the year ahead of Mercedes. They were the 4th fastest team when we showed up to Bahrain, and now they're like the 9th fastest team. I have no idea what happened to Aston Martin. I think they're just ready to get to 2025, maybe even 2026. But yeah, who knows what happened to that team. Sprint pole, I've gone for Lando Norris. McLaren have been lacking in pace a little bit, but they performed incredible at Qatar last year. They looked like the fastest team by far. I'm kind of expecting a bit of a rebound from them. I think the track layout should suit them a little bit more than some of the other tracks we've been to recently where they've been lacking pace. So Lando Norris, a little bit of a bounce back after losing the title, maybe some pressure lifted off his shoulders. I think he takes pole for the sprint race.
I don't know how I feel about McLaren right now. I think they've just been too, inconsistent recently. Vegas did not give me any confidence in their pace.
Hey,
but
they were consistently slow. The drivers finished next to each other on track.
That is true. They were consistently slow. But in Vegas, I was given a lot of confidence in Mercedes' pace. I've gone with Lewis Hamilton for sprint pole. I think that Lewis wants to get one more big thing with Mercedes before he leaves. Even though he said he didn't want to come back after Brazil, I think this past weekend in Vegas kind of injected some life into his very short remaining time at Mercedes. So I think Lewis wants to do something cool with the team that he loves so much still. So I think Lewis is going to get sprint pole. The track is dusty, windy. The Mercedes does perform well under like slipperier track conditions. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going with Lewis.
Yeah, definitely won't be cold in Vegas, so they won't have that to their advantage, but the tracks will be slippery. So there are some commonalities. I want to back Lewis Hamilton in that prediction. Like, I would love it if he pulled a pole out of nowhere. I just don't see it happening. I don't think he has a grasp on that car in qualifying. He has been thoroughly outperformed by George Russell. But if there was any driver who could just pull a lap out of nowhere and it be absolutely magic, lightning in a bottle, it is Lewis Hamilton. So I will never discredit a Lewis Hamilton pole position. It could happen. I'm sticking on the McLaren hype train for my sprint winner. I think it's going to be Oscar Piastri. Now that the title fight is over, he should be allowed to win races again. They gave Lando Norris the sprint race in Brazil. Clearly, it didn't matter in the title fight at the end of the day. I could see Oscar Piastri getting one back on his teammate, overtaking Lando Norris off the line, getting that sprint win. And so I'm locking in Oscar Piastri as my sprint winner this weekend.
There would be 2 Qatar sprints in a row for Oscar, so I think it's definitely possible. I think while Lewis might have the pace for pole on, I guess it would be Friday, I'm going with Charles Leclerc to win the sprint on Saturday. I think the warmer conditions will lend itself better to the pace of the Ferrari. I think the Ferrari will perform a little bit better. I think if Vegas had been a little bit warmer, it probably would have had better race pace. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going with Charles to win the sprint.
That is always a great choice. Charles Leclerc, one of the best drivers on the grid, and it is so incredible that he's going to be teammates with Lewis Hamilton next year. That's really all I could think about when you said Charles Leclerc after Lewis Hamilton. I was like, can't wait to see those guys on teammates. But I agree, he definitely has a good shot to win the sprint race. Speaking of Charles Leclerc, I have put him on Grand Prix pole. I feel like I've predicted Charles Leclerc on pole like 4 races in a row, and it hasn't happened. I just keep putting him out there. I'm like, surely it is going to happen one of the days. The Ferrari is quick again. Charles is the best qualifier on the grid. Certainly, I have to get a Charles Leclerc pole point at some point in this podcast. So I'm going to keep putting it out there. This weekend might be the weekend where Charles Leclerc gets pole in Qatar.
It might be the weekend. I agree with you. I'm also predicting him on pole, so maybe my extra prediction will give him a little push, a couple thousandths that he needs. We'll see what happens, but yeah, he's been really consistent, especially coming back from our, I guess we'll call it autumnal break before Austin. Since coming back from that, he's performed really well, and I think if anyone is going to get pole in a Ferrari car this weekend, it'll probably be Charles.
We say that coming off a weekend where Carlos Sainz outqualified Charles Leclerc. So who knows what could happen when we come to qualifying on Saturday. For the podium, third place, I have gone for George Russell. Maybe this is recency bias, having just seen what happened in Vegas, and I should be considering a broader spectrum of races where Mercedes have been slow. But you've kind of convinced me in our talking that this track is going to be similar to Vegas. I know it's so much warmer and they won't have the cold, but it is going to be slippery. It's going to be dusty. And Mercedes was quick here last year. I think George Russell would have been in a shout for the win had Lewis Hamilton not taken him out on lap 1. He almost won the sprint race last year. And so I think George Russell has a chance to finish on the podium this weekend. I have put him in P3.
I think that's a good pick. Like I said before, I think that Mercedes has a great shot this weekend, which is why I put Lewis Hamilton in P3. I don't know what it is, but I just really want to back Lewis this weekend. I want him to have a great weekend, just one more great weekend with Mercedes. I think that would be awesome. I don't necessarily want him to have a great enough weekend to like win the race or like win the sprint even. Just like a sprint pole and a podium is like just enough success in my book for this weekend, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll save the Lewis win for Abu Dhabi. If he goes off on top in Abu Dhabi, I'm okay with that. If Mercedes are slow and we don't get any points, I'm gonna blame you because you fully put this idea into my mind, but at least we're going down together, both of us predicting a Mercedes in P3. P2, I've gone for Lando Norris. I'm kind of with you on this one too. I don't fully know where the McLaren pace is going to be. Obviously, I've backed them to rebound a little bit, but I'm just going to be safe, put it in P2, maybe not a win, but Lando Norris P2 in Qatar.
I think that's a good prediction. I can't get behind it. I don't know, maybe this is a safer prediction, but I'm putting all my eggs in the Ferrari basket. Once again, I feel like I've said that phrase a lot on our podcast recently, but I've gone with Charles Leclerc in P2. I think he will have a great weekend, and he is going to get passed by someone else to win the race, or to lose the race, I guess, for Charles, but P2 for Charles.
We are just willing Ferrari onto this Constructors title, and that is why I have predicted Charles Leclerc to win the Qatar Grand Prix. Will it happen? I don't know. This is another weekend where we're just rocking up, and I have no idea where the team's pace will be. I've put 3 different drivers from 3 different teams on the podium, haven't even mentioned Max Verstappen's name. I have no idea where the pace is going to be this weekend, but when in doubt, pick Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. I guess everyone's a Ferrari fan, even if you say you're not. I have no reasoning for this. I don't know if they'll be quick or not. They were kind of slow here last year. Carlos Sainz didn't even start the race. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But I'm just going to go with my gut, fully vibes prediction, Charles Leclerc P1 in Qatar.
I'm also going with my gut on this one. I think I've got Carlos Sainz in P1. Maybe this is just me really just wanting the perfect storybook ending for Carlos in Ferrari and his time there. I truly just want him to win this race. I really think it's definitely a possibility. Like I said, I think the warmer conditions will lend themselves to a better Ferrari race pace than they had last weekend. And they weren't slow in Vegas by any means. So I think it's definitely a possibility for Carlos to pick up another dub for Ferrari. We'll see what happens.
Well, we'll probably know if he's going to on Friday, because anytime he's quicker than Charles Leclerc, he shows up out of the gate 2/10 faster than him. So we will know fairly early if it's going to be a good or average weekend for Carlos Sainz. It is time for our 2 push-in predictions, everyone's favorite part of the podcast, where the championship could swing wildly in one of our favors. My first push-in prediction is that 2 different teams qualify on pole this weekend. So one team will take pole in the sprint, the other team will take pole for the Grand Prix. Have I perhaps limited myself by not saying 2 different drivers and saying 2 different teams? Maybe, but these are supposed to be bold predictions, so I have gone bold and said 2 different teams qualify on pole. My second pushing prediction is that at least 2 drivers make contact during a competitive session. Could I make that any broader? Probably if I tried, but I just didn't know how to phrase it. That's all this was. Last week at Vegas, we saw so many drivers go side by side through that tight chicane and not make any contact. It almost blew my mind. They went 3 wide and no one made contact. Kevin Magnussen and Liam Lawson, 2 drivers who make contact for fun, went through that corner side by side and did make contact. So surely this weekend in Qatar, where there's like as much runoff as you want, somebody's going to make contact during a competitive session, and I'm locking that in for my second push-in prediction.
I think that's a great prediction. Clarifying question about that prediction. Are we saying 2 separate incidents? Or are we saying 1 incident where 2 drivers make contact?
1 incident where 2 drivers make contact. Like if a driver spins off and hits the wall, I didn't want that to count. Like I wanted it to be like a multi-car incident. At least 2 drivers come together. That is what I mean by that.
Cool. That makes sense. I think that's a good prediction. Yeah, who knows what'll happen. I just deleted one of my pushing predictions because I think it's terrible. It was just, I'm not even going to say it. It was awful. But in place of it, what I am going to do is, again, I'm putting all my eggs in the Ferrari basket. Last week, I predicted Ferrari to score the most points over the course of the weekend, and they did not do that. They let me down a little bit, but that's okay. So in place of my terrible prediction, I am going to re-predict that Ferrari scores the most points over the weekend. And I feel like that's a little bit more bold because there is a sprint and a Grand Prix. So something crazy could happen in the sprint or the Grand Prix and cause that not to happen, even if Ferrari does have a great weekend. So we'll see. And then my second prediction, so we haven't talked about him yet in this podcast episode, but we had to throw him in there. Our favorite Red Bull driver, Sergio Perez, I am predicting him to score 0 points over the course of the weekend. And I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I feel like that's kind of bold. I don't know.
2 chances to score, 2 chances for a Q1 exit. We'll see what happens with Sergio Perez.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'll do enough to lose his Red Bull seat. Probably not. I don't know. Maybe if he killed Christian Horner, then that would make him lose the seat, but probably not. I don't know.
Supposedly, there are rumors that they will be deciding his seat after Abu Dhabi. At this point, I don't care. I'm done speculating. I was invested in it. I don't care. I'm just going to let it happen. In my heart, Sergio's driving for them next year, and if something changes, I will rejoice then. I'm done getting my hopes up about Sergio Perez.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've seen these rumors too many times now at this point. I mean, if you go back and listen to our podcast episodes from like a year ago this time, you know what we were talking about? Rumors of Sergio Perez getting replaced. We talked about all year this year on the podcast. Rumors of Sergio Perez getting replaced.
At least he's consistently giving us stuff to talk about.
This is true.
At this point,
we appreciate it.
Before we sign off for this podcast, we have to know what your other prediction was, just so if it comes true, we can laugh at you a little bit. I want to know. The fans for sure want to know. We will not hold you to it, but just let us know what that last prediction was.
The last prediction was Aston Martin appears in both Q3 sessions, which...
That's not horrible. That could happen.
I don't know.
You have Fernando Alonso at the wheel. That's a possibility.
I mean, it is a possibility, but I mean, I'm also predicting Fernando Alonso to be my back marker of the weekend. So I feel like I can't really hedge my predictions there. I feel like that would be not advantageous to me, but
that'd be spreading your predictions, covering your basis, if you will. But that is all right. it is probably not going to happen. That car is slow. So it was probably a wise decision on your part to throw that one away. As always, if you're listening to this podcast, head over to our social media and share your predictions with us. We would love to react to them on our reaction podcast to the Qatar Grand Prix. And we love getting to engage with the fans. So be sure to go do that. Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts?
Parting podium thoughts is, man, we're into the second to last race of the weekend, which is kind of sad, but we're also going into the holidays, which is great. It's always a great time to spend time with your friends and family. So I hope you guys who are listening or watching get to do that this holiday season. We are very thankful for you guys. Thankful that you guys are listening and watching our podcast. So thank you. Please continue to listen if you like us. And if you don't like us, I don't know, maybe give us a thumbs up or something.
Yeah, share it with your friends because someone out there will surely like us talking about Formula One. This episode is coming out on Thanksgiving, so it's true. We're thankful for you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Feel free to follow along, subscribe, like, do all of the things. Leave us a comment, a review. Do it all. Free to you. Helps us out a ton. We will see you next week to react to the Qatar Grand Prix. Finish this year out together. Thanks for watching. See ya.
See ya.